Welcome to another Mendix tutorial. Today we're going to learn how to integrate ChatGPT's API into our Mendix application. My name's Philip from Blueberg. Let's jump right into it.
So here's our application. Let's take a quick look. It's a small muffin shop where we're selling some tasty muffins on the internet. What the customer can do is look at all the previous customer reviews related to each muffin. The list can grow exponentially the more customers we get. So what we want to do at the top is actually show a summary of all the customer reviews to make it easier. What happens right now when we click summarize is we get an empty comment box or feedback box with AI summary, but without any data because we haven't implemented the AI connection. So let's do that right now. First of all, we can take a quick look at the domain model so we know what we're working with. We have a product entity, and attached to the product entity are feedback entities, as well as a feedback summary entity. The feedback summary entity is where we will put our AI summary. So we have a string attribute called feedback text and a query state. So the app knows what current state our query is in that we've sent to OpenAI. So before we do any coding, we need to download some marketplace modules. And for this, we'll need the Community Commons module, the encryption module, the GenAI Commons module, and the OpenAI connector module. Once all that's downloaded, we need to set an encryption key. So just search for encryption key in the App Explorer. Open the first constant. In the value field, enter a 32-character string. Once we've got that set up, we can head back to our main module, and in our pages folder, we can add a new folder called OpenAI, a new page called OpenAI _config. We'll use a blank template now. In here, we will go and drag a snippet from the OpenAI connector module that we downloaded earlier. Search for the OpenAI connector, head to the Use Me folder, configuration folder, and then there's the snippet configurations. Just drag that in and save. Next, we want it visible in our navigation. So we'll add a new item and we'll call it OpenAI and open a page, which will be the OpenAI config page that we've just created. Hit save. Then we can reload the app. All right, now we have the OpenAI config page in our app bar. Let's just open it up. We can add a new API connection by hitting the new button, and this is where we can set all our connection data. So just give it a display name that you can easily decipher. Set the API type to the API you're using. The predefined or pre-generated API endpoint, we can just hit apply here, and then in the token field is where we enter our API token or API key. Once all that's saved, we will see the API here in the menu, and in the deployed models column is where we can see all of the models that we have access to through our API. All right, now we need to connect the API to our application. For this, we can jump back into Mendix Studio Pro, close the navigation, close the config page. We can head to our summarize button where all the magic happens. The summarize button right now just calls a nano flow where we change the query state of our feedback summary entity to running, and at the end of the query, we change it to completed, each with a refresh object for the client. In the middle here is where we're going to talk to our API. So what we want to do first is retrieve the model that we want to use. So we'll insert an activity and retrieve a model from the database. And the object we're retrieving is called OpenAI deployed model. And in the XPath constraint, we're going to search for model. Here is where we can enter the model we want to use. And in this case, we're going to use GPT-5. Make sure that the range is set to first, otherwise it will pull a list and not a single object. So there we go, we've retrieved our object. Now we need to call the API. You can do this by just entering another activity, and this time we're going to call a microflow. we can search for the chat completions microflow without a history. Mendix has already set the OpenAI deployed model for us, and the user prompt is actually where we can query or enter our query to OpenAI. So I'm going to input my user prompt here. The one thing that's actually missing from this user prompt is the summaries. In order to get the summaries in text format, I have prepared a small export of all the feedbacks in a JSON string. So I'm just going to pull that submicroflow in here, and we'll call this feedback JSON. I'll head back to my user prompt and say, here are the reviews. Like so. Put it down here. Excellent. And one more thing we need to do, the optional two attributes here, we have to set them to empty if we're not going to use them, and we're not going to use them, so we'll just set them to empty quickly. Excellent. Now, once we have a response, we need to add it to our feedback summary. So we can come back here and change the feedback summary text and set it to response/response text. All right, now we can save and reload the application. Awesome. Let's head to Red Velvet Dream, hit info and hit summarize. Lovely. That looks good.
That's it. I hope you found this video interesting and helpful. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. Goodbye.